being more physically active reduces the likelihood of cancer-specific mortality for breast, colon, and prostate cancers on the order of 30 to 50%. 30 to 50%.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's on the order of, like, drug number 3. I don't know which drug I'm going to name, but it's big. It's big.
Yeah.
Further, we have beautiful emerging experimental evidence in animal models that tells us that exercise is helpful as well. But what's interesting is that those animal models are telling us that it is actually the combination of exercise and high quality nutrition that makes a difference. That makes a difference in reducing the likelihood of death from cancer.
Hi, I'm Bill Jollie. Welcome to Interrupt Hunger's Movie Give podcast, where we talk with experts in exercise as medicine, food as medicine, and food insecurity. And understanding that knowledge isn't always enough to help you lose weight. Every other episode features someone who's lost at least 10% body weight to share exactly how they did it. Today, we'll hear how exercise fights cancer with Dr. Kathryn Schmitz, PhD. Dr. Schmitz is a professor of medicine in the Division of Hematology Oncology at the University of Pittsburgh Hillman Cancer Center and founder of the Moving Through Cancer program of the American College of Sports Medicine. She has over 300 peer-reviewed scientific papers and was the principal investigator on several large NIH-funded trials. Her work has appeared in JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA Oncology, JNCI, and JCO, among other prestigious journals. She is the lead author on the first exercise guideline for cancer patients and survivors from 2010 and senior author on the update from 2019. She has won numerous prestigious scientific awards, among them the Citation Award from the American College of Sports Medicine, the Distinguished Scientist Award from the Society of Behavioral Medicine, and the Clinical Research Professor Award from the American Cancer Society. Dr. Schmitz is a past president of the American College of Sports Medicine, and this is really cool, so I had to add it, an honorary fellow of the College of Royal Surgeons in Edinburgh, Scotland. And one last fun fact, ChatGPT lists her as one of the top 3 researchers in the world in the field of exercise oncology. So y'all are in for a very special treat. We'll get to today's discussion after a quick message from Interrupt Hunger.
If you've ever said, I know what I need to do to lose weight, I just need to do it, then this challenge is for you. We help you turn your knowing into doing. The Interrupt Hunger 12-week weight loss challenge is a plan to help you lose weight by creating healthy habits in a fun and easy way. While you create new habits, we use compassion and community to help you stay motivated long enough for your new habits to stick. Bring the 12-week weight loss challenge to the places you live, work, and pray. Once a week, come together to exercise as a team in your neighborhood or at a local park. Then, once a month, come together to give back to your community by volunteering at a local food bank, food pantry, or soup kitchen. And finally, once a month, donate your weight to celebrate your weight loss victories. Donate at least $1 for every pound you lose to help fight hunger. 100% of proceeds benefit a Feeding America food bank in your area. You already know exercise makes you feel better. You already know the difference between healthy and unhealthy eating. And you already know it feels really good to give back. The Interrupt Hunger 12-week weight loss challenge helps you to be intentional about how you move, eat, and give, and helps you turn your knowing into doing. Visit interrupthunger.org to join as an individual or start a team. Contact us with any questions. We're always happy to chat.
Katie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Jollie. Thank you so much for inviting me to come talk to you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Very good. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time, ever since I first had the thought of doing a podcast. So this is going to be a lot of fun for me today, and this is great. So I thought we might just get started with a quick story about how I got into exercise oncology, and it is quite personal for me, as you know, because we've known each other for a while now. So we'll just dive into it. So I was in the Marine Corps 6 years. Fantastic shape, as you might expect. And then I did what a lot of Marines do after they get out. They get lazy and not eating so well. And I put on quite a bit of weight over the course of 15 years. I really hadn't exercised too much at all during those 15 years. And so in the spring of 2011, a buddy convinced me, Coy, convinced me to train over the summer and do my first triathlon with him that fall. And I remember saying, like, Coy, I can't do a triathlon. He's like, shut up, you're a jarhead. You're going to do this with me. And Coy in that triathlon, Katie, saved my life. Because 39 at the time, the girls, Katie and Kelsey, are 10 and 14 at the time. We didn't have Enza yet. But as I started training, I was just so tired. I mean, and I would say like May or time frame, I would swim 5 laps in the pool, and I would be so exhausted. I'd have to hold on to the side of the pool, catch my breath before getting out. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, okay, something's going on here. Like, I know I'm out of shape, but I shouldn't be this tired. And then as the summer progressed, as training progressed, I'm just off. I go to the doctor. He did a chest scan. Lungs are clear. Here's albuterol inhaler. It's probably exercise-induced asthma. And I said, how do I know if I have it? He's like, well, if the albuterol works, you have it. If not, it's something else. I'm like, okay, all right, this is good. So it turns out it was definitely something else, because I would say maybe 4 weeks after that, Coy and I are doing a training brick. So we're in the pool. We go immediately into a run. A mile into my run, Katie, I am wheezing so bad, it's literally sounded like I swallowed a whistle. And I get home off the run. I call the doc. I'm like, I'm coming in tomorrow. And so one thing leads to another. He orders a CT scan, and they find enlarged lymph nodes all over my body, above and below the diaphragm, left side, right side, all over. And another twist of fate, I think it's a God thing, just like Coy invited me and doing that training for that triathlon. My largest lymph node, 4.5 centimeter, mediastina, right in the middle of my chest, was pressing against my airway, and that's what caused the wheeze. So I got my official diagnosis with biopsy, December 7th, 2011, what happened to be Pearl Harbor Day, which is kind of fitting, but I got diagnosed with something called chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And it's very slow growing, it's indolent. Probably every CLL patient's been told, oh, you probably had this for 10 years or so. I'm 39 at the time. The average patient in diagnosis is about 70, 72. So I was an outlier. And that's why I say that triathlon saved my life, because we caught it super, super early. If you catch it early, there's great meds now. Back then it was only chemotherapy. There's great meds. But I remember asking my oncologist, actually the first oncologist, do the obligatory, so doc, how long do I have? And he told Tracy and I, my wife, no bedside manner, no personality, says, you have about 10 years to live. So that made it very real, very fast. Yeah, right? And so I quickly learned that's not the right thing to tell patients, ever. And I quickly got a new oncologist, a younger guy, and he was a triathlete himself, which the crazy part of this, him being an athlete, I asked him, where can I go to learn about nutrition and exercise? Because I want to do everything I can to be here as long as I can. And he didn't know. He didn't have an answer. And he's like, I don't know, maybe Leukemia Lymphoma Society's website. And that was it. So I wasn't, this is my first exposure with oncology, really. So I knew how to study. I dove into the science. And one of the first studies I saw was this really cool, it was a mouse model, it's not in humans, it was a mouse model that showed mice given a running wheel actually had reductions in tumor growth compared to the mice that didn't. And that was really all I need to take me down this really crazy adventure that we have. So a few years passed, and I started hearing your name and seeing your posts, and one study after the other. And I just sent an email out, and I think we talked like a couple days later. We spent like an hour on the phone, and you were on a train. And I don't even remember how many years ago that was, but I still remember that conversation. That was really fun. So with that, why don't you tell us about yourself and how you got into this, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the knowledge.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Well, I want to talk about the mouse studies some more because I think it's a fun story to talk about the history of the mouse studies. So remind me of that later.
Okay.
But so I am an exercise physiologist by training, and my training was in cardiovascular epidemiology and in obesity prevention. And I started my career working in the area of exercise and cardiac and metabolic issues. I really felt like I was staring down the face of a career of very incremental steps forward, like the big leaps in the field of exercise and cardiovascular disease and obesity had already been made. Not that there wasn't more work to do, there certainly was, there certainly is, but I was interested in being in a field where I could be a part of something at the ground floor and really move it forward. And so I was invited by a mentor. I was at the University of Minnesota at the time. She said, "Have you ever thought about working in exercise and cancer?" And I was like, "Well, I can spell cancer in reading." And there was one paper in particular written by a researcher by the name of Anne McTiernan, who has been a mentor and friend for decades. And she wrote a paper called A Call to Action. And it was written specifically to people with my kind of training, people who did exercise research that focused on cardiovascular issues, metabolic issues. And she basically said, "Hey, we need you over here in cancer prevention control. We have a lot of work to do." And I answered the call. And I literally called her on the phone. This was, pre-internet days. And, I called her on the phone. She was at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle. And I said, "I'm answering the call. Tell me what to do." She said, "Well, I'm going to this meeting in Bethesda in a couple of weeks. Meet you there." And I said, "Great, I'll go." So I agreed to go to the ASPO meeting, American Society of Preventive Oncology, solely for the purpose of meeting Anne in person and being able to have a conversation with her about how to move this field forward. The field of exercise oncology had not been birthed yet. It was really just sort of not even an idea in anybody's mind at that point. The term exercise oncology was coined by Carrie Cornier in 2007, and this conversation I had with Anne McTiernan was in 2000. So we were really at the cutting edge of working in this field. And with Anne's help and ideas, I wrote a grant to the Susan G. Komen Foundation, and I got my first grant in the field of exercise oncology. And it was, doing strength training for breast cancer patients. And I have done a lot of work in that area since then. And then I wrote my first grant in the field of exercise oncology to the NCI, also about strength training and breast cancer patients, and got my first grant funded. You got it on the first try, which is unheard of, and got my first 3 grants that I wrote to NCI on the first try.
This is easy.
So clearly this was an area that was, oh, right, exactly. It was like, this is easy. Why not do just this from now on? So I, started down this path, and, there were probably maybe 3 or 4 people at that point in the field who were diligently working in this area. And then slowly 3 or 4 became 10, 10 became 20. Now we have hundreds and hundreds of people working in the field of exercise oncology. So the field has really just, grown exponentially since the year 2000, particularly between 2010 and now. It's just skyrocketed. It's been really fun to see, the number of studies that is out there. So scientists use this system called PubMed, literally like it sounds, PubMed. And go online, go to PubMed, and you can put in search terms in order to find research on particular topics. And if you go and look for research on cancer and exercise, you'll see that there are now over 15,000 published research studies in the area of exercise and cancer. So this is a field that has truly, truly grown up in the time that I've been working in it. It's been an honor and a privilege to get to work with some of the greatest people in the field around the world. And I've been very much a part of, it's been very important to me to publish guidelines so that we have some guidance that we can give to people living with and beyond cancer as to what they should do. Because I think, the average person on the street, A, doesn't know that exercise is useful in the setting of cancer, and B, doesn't know what they should do if they do think that exercise is good for them during and after their cancer treatment. So it's been really important to me to communicate the scientific evidence base to the public, which is why I do podcasts like this. I'm very interested in doing podcasts like this because I want to make sure that, I feel like I answer to the patients. My audience and the people that I'm most interested in talking to are people who are dealing with a cancer journey right now.
It's you talk about spreading the word. So I've been doing this for 12 years. So Interrupt Hunger is a recent launch, but I've been a survivor for 12 years now, and Tracy and I have been together for, we'll be married 30 years in June. And any chance that she gets, even now, if there's somebody in the neighborhood, at church or a book club, that as soon as they get diagnosed, she reaches out and say, listen, you need to talk to your oncologist, ask them, talk to them about exercise, and ask for an exercise referral. So I'm sure we'll get into that later, but it's pretty crazy. I've been in the prevention world for a little bit now, and like so many oncologists, so actually any type of doc really, they didn't have training for it. And they don't know what to say, so it's like opening a can of worms too. So there's so much knowledge that we need to get out there and make up aware. So I'm excited. I'm just thankful for people like you. So this is good. So
well, thank you, Jollie.
So the two things I kind of say when I'm talking to folks about it is, first of all, my big goal, and I know it's yours, is that every single cancer survivor should be referred to an exercise specialist as part of their individual survivorship plan, just period. The other thing that I tell folks is, and I do this on just social media posts or chance meetings, is that you insert exercise anywhere along the cancer continuum and you have dramatic improvements. So we know folks who exercise routinely get cancer a lot less often. We know cancer survivors who are going through active treatment have fewer side effects. There's this kind of newer topic called cancer prehab. So getting exercise before treatment or surgery. And then the big kicker is cancer survivors who exercise actually do quite well compared to the survivors who don't. So if you
the risk of cancer death is much lower.
Yes, ma'am. So if you could kind of take us through that continuum, if you don't mind, and I'll let you start wherever you might, but what are the recommendations and why is it good for you? That might be a good place to start. Why is it good for you?
Sure. So the first place, let's go from prevention all the way through long-term survivorship. So starting with prevention, we have beautiful epidemiologic evidence. Now, you know what? I'm going to start with the types of evidence. So let's start about types of evidence, and then I'll go through the timeline of the journey. So we can have observational evidence, and we do that when we're in a situation where we're doing outcomes that happen a long time from now, and that we can have very little control over the types of interventions that might happen. So for example, if we're talking about cancer prevention or preventing cancer from occurring a second time or cancer death, we're not going to do experiments with human beings on that. A, it's unethical, and B, it would take too long. It's just simply untenable. We can't get that done. And so we have observational evidence for certain sections of the data that you and I are going to talk about, okay? The second type of evidence would be experimental evidence, but there's a couple of different kinds of experimental evidence. There's the animal models, and the animal models are fantastic. We're so delighted to have the animal models because animals' life cycle is so much shorter that we can look at questions in the animal that we can't possibly look at in humans. That's great news. The less great news, Jolly, is that animal models do not accurately recapitulate the truth of what happens in a human being. There are many, many variables that happen in humans that are controlled for in animal models that we can't control for in the human. So we find something out in the animal, and it happens over and over again in drug development. It happens over and over again that we see something in the animal, and we prove it, and we prove it, and we see it, and we see it in the animal, and then we try it in the human, and it doesn't work the same way. And so, there's lots of evidence to show us that the animal models are useful, but they're not perfect. So another type of evidence that we can have are human clinical trials, right? So the human clinical trials, that's beautiful. That's a great thing to have. That's where we actually take a group of people, we randomize them, we exercise some of them, we don't exercise others, and we follow them over time for whatever outcome we're interested in. That is the pinnacle of the evidence base that we can come up with. We just can't do it for cancer as an outcome because it takes so long to develop cancer, right? So when we talk about primary prevention, what we have in the area of primary prevention are animal model studies, and we have the capacity to look at whether exercising animals prevents them from developing cancer, developing tumors, right? And we can do observational studies with human beings where we can have thousands of people answer surveys about their physical activity and then follow them over the course of decades to see whether the people who reported doing more activity actually resulted in having less cancer. And so in the answer of both of those types of evidence, one more thing about the types of evidence, if you have all three, that's the trifecta. You're really, really happy to have all three, but really good to have two of the three. So in the area of prevention, we have two of the three. We have the animal models, we have the observational evidence, and the order of magnitude of the reduction of risk of cancer that occurs as a result of being more physically active is somewhere on the order of 10 to 15%. Okay, so it's not as big as it is for prevention of recurrence of cancer or cancer mortality in people who've already had a cancer diagnosis. So we think that exercise is one of many factors that are associated with prevention of cancer. And so if I would say, if I'm going to talk to somebody who is interested in, how important is it that I'm active in order to prevent cancer from occurring, what I'm going to say is, I cannot tell you that exercise is going to prevent you from having cancer. What I can tell you is that if you are physically active, the cancer is going to be smaller, it's going to be easier to treat, you're going to go through your treatment easier, and you're going to survive longer. So that's how I kind of talk to people about the evidence base regarding prevention. Now, when we get into once people are diagnosed with cancer, once they already are going through their treatment, then our focus changes, right, Jolly? At that point, we're now interested in understanding whether or not we can treat the symptoms that people are experiencing as they go through their treatment. We're interested in prehabilitation in particular. There is really, really gorgeous evidence for the value of prehabilitation, which is pretty intensive exercise and nutrition therapy prior to starting cancer treatments, cancer therapies, in particular surgery. And the strongest evidence base is in the area of lung cancer and colon cancer. And so we do have recommendations that say that we should be doing prehabilitation, exercise, and nutrition interventions in the setting of colon and lung cancer. So people who are more physically active in the weeks leading up to their surgery for lung cancer and colon cancer will get out of the hospital quicker, will have less functional decline, and will be better able to withstand their chemotherapy and all of the other treatments that might follow their surgery, just simply by virtue of being more physically active in the weeks prior to their surgery.
Can I ask you? So lung and colon, it's the strongest.
Yes.
Does that mean it doesn't work in other types of cancer, or we just don't have the research?
That's a great question. The answer is absolutely not. One of the things that happens in exercise and cancer research is, we really need to look at things very, precisely. And so we have evidence to tell us that exercise reduces the risk of onset of 7 different cancers. And I get asked the question all the time, does that mean that exercise doesn't prevent other types of cancer? And the answer is no. It's just that we don't have the studies with sufficient people in them to be able to say, yes, this works for these other cancers as well. There's probably not a cancer for which exercise is not beneficial for prevention purposes. Probably the same story. Think about it. What we're really doing with exercise in the setting of prehabilitation, Jollie, has much less to do with the cancer than it has to do with the surgery and the need to recover from the surgery. So if you are having a significant surgery, doing prehab or a significant, not even surgery, a significant medical therapy. So prehabilitation prior to bone marrow transplant, for example, right? So doing prehabilitation prior to something that is going to be a very challenging, physically challenging medical therapy, bone marrow transplant, a big surgery of any kind, exercise is likely to be quite useful. The concept is pretty straightforward. We can predict with tremendous accuracy that people going through cancer and going through serious medical therapies like bone marrow transplant will have a decline in their physical function and a decline in their muscle mass and a decline in their strength as a result of going through a big challenge like a surgery or bone marrow transplant. We can predict that, right? So if you start here, okay, this is where you're starting, you're going to go down, and then slowly you're going to recover and come back, right? You're going to come back, right? So if you start here, you're declining, and then you're going to come back. But if we get you before your surgery up here, then your decline gets to where your baseline was. And then you recover back to better than, right? Okay? So that's the visual. That's what we work for with prehabilitation. Again, it has very little to do with the cancer itself, with the type of cancer itself. It has to do with the seriousness and the intensity of the medical therapy that the person is being asked to go through.
What is there? What's the minimum amount of prehab, and what's ideal?
Right. So programs for prehab have been as short as 3 weeks in the literature, but we love to have 2 months, 3 months. You just usually don't. I mean, think about it. You get a diagnosis of cancer and you're scheduling your surgery, right? So it's not uncommon for people to have 2 to 4 weeks. It is still worthwhile to do a program of prehabilitation. Prehabilitation is the most intensive exercise program that I will prescribe to somebody with a diagnosis of cancer. It basically means it's boot camp. It is, you have not started your treatment. You need to, drop and give me 20. It's, it is, as hard as you are able to work without injuring yourself every day until you get to the point of your treatment. It should be
limited time. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So you want to get as much as you can without injuring yourself. You don't want to, that doesn't help anybody for you to injure yourself. But so prehabilitation, because of the nature of wanting to do something really intensive in a short time, is a place where it's really good to have an exercise professional help you. With prevention, it's really about aerobic exercise and doing 150 to 300 minutes a week of aerobic exercise. Really, we really want people to just be moving. Just move more. Are you moving enough? No, it's not enough. Move more. Just move more. But with prehabilitation, because it's so intensive, and because it needs to be structured, and you need to be doing, it's not a bad idea to be doing lifting every day, where you're doing back and bis one day, and chest and tris the next day, and legs the next day, and then repeat. So, it's not a bad idea to work with somebody who really knows what they're talking about with regard to heavy, heavy training for prehabilitation. When we get into actually, you're doing chemotherapy, you're doing radiation treatment, you're doing immunotherapy, you're doing, biological therapies, or, hormone-related therapies. At that point, our focus shifts, right? So the focus now comes very close in. Sort of like prehabilitation is close in, but we're really, really close in when we're going through radiation and chemotherapy and the like. Okay, at that point, it's really about how do you feel? Like, how do you feel right now? And you're trying to get through something. Okay, so I know you know this. My wife went through head and neck cancer and had to go through combined chemo and radiation. And chemo is hard. Radiation is hard. Combine them, wow, that's hard. Okay, so she had 8 weeks of this, and I made her walk for a half an hour every day while she was going through that. And she was able to get through all of her chemo and all of her radiation without one dose delay or one dose reduction, which is unheard of.
Yeah, I was going to say, how common is that for that happening?
Very rare, very rare. Like a third of people get through with no reductions. So, it's really about how you feel right now. And I think one of the things that I would love to communicate here is about, I can hear somebody listening to this saying, what do you not understand about I feel crappy? Why would you ask me to exercise on top of how I feel as I'm going through this treatment? And my answer is, are you feeling great sitting on the couch? Yeah. Is that making you feel better? Is it? Is it really? Because I want to test that hypothesis. I want you to get off the couch and move for 5 minutes and be honest with yourself. Do you feel better after you move? And I'm guessing the answer is going to be yes, and I'm guessing that you're going to want to continue. And, nobody benefits from sitting all day. Nobody. It does not matter if you're dealing with metastatic disease, if you're palliative, does not matter. Nobody benefits from sitting on the couch all day. So that's the focus as we're going through treatment is how do you feel? And exercise and movement to help you feel better. And if you're going to try to keep it simple, then you really want to focus on getting as much as 30 minutes of aerobic exercise 3 times a week. If you can, getting twice a week strength training in is great because people really tend to lose a lot of function and a lot of muscle as they go through their systemic therapies and their radiation treatment, their chemotherapy, their immunotherapy. So doing the strength training can be really helpful to making sure that people don't lose as much function if you can get to that.
So we're going back. I got diagnosed December 2011. I started 6 rounds of chemotherapy, the old-fashioned miserable kind. I like to tell people, if you haven't heard what it's like, think back to maybe college days where you had your worst hangover of your life, but you had the flu at the same time. That's kind of like what it was. And I know different types of cancers that there's chemotherapies that have a much worse effect than what I went through. But I was already training for a triathlon for the better almost a year. It was a sprint triathlon. It was a baby at the time. But still, I'm exercising, and so I'd go through chemotherapy Thursday and Friday. Friday night it would start to hit. Saturday was really bad, but like Sunday it was starting to get a little bit better.
There you go.
Monday and Tuesday it was almost gone. Wednesday I would start walking again. Now I'm still beat down. I'm still tired. I'm listening to my body, but I would start walking, and I would say by that following week, that next Monday, so a full week and a half, like I'm running.
Yeah. So you've just pointed something out that I think is crucial, and that is that, and I write about this in my book, and I actually think that I quote you in my book about this issue. People who are physically active and who are athletic, in particular, and go through a bout of cancer and out of cancer treatment can use their knowledge of their bodies and what they know about how their body works and how it feels and how it responds to things to gauge when it is okay for them to exercise and to get back to exercise as quickly as possible. And you're very knowledgeable about your body and how it works, and you're able to tell me even now, how many years hence, exactly how many days after chemotherapy you could get back to running, right? But think about the average person who enters cancer sedentary, right? So the average person who enters cancer sedentary believes that they're just going to be sedentary throughout the entire time of cancer, and they feel lousy, and they don't think there's anything they can do to help themselves. And the difficulty is we want them to be moving, but I fully acknowledge, Jollie, that there are days when that is crappy advice, where there are couch days. There are days where it's like, nope, it is not happening today.
It is kind of a crazy phenomenon
that
you're going through, because like, if you're doing it routinely, or even if you start doing it, you're feeling better with the exercise. And so those days where you are just feeling so beat down and crappy, like, it's an internal struggle. Like, I know, like, I feel like I should probably take a day off, but I want to. But when you do, and it takes practice, but when you do take that day off, like, it feels good, because your body needs it. And now, all these years later, it's okay. You got to take time off. You got to listen to your body.
Exactly. And so it's very challenging to prescribe exercise for people as they're going through their treatment, because we have to acknowledge that there are days that are couch days, that are just, nope, it's not happening days, right? The problem is that most people assume that every day is a couch day, and that doesn't serve them. The other thing that I think is, news to people who have been sedentary and they're going through their cancer treatment, is that if you are willing to try to be physically active every day, you will learn which days you are actually capable of doing it. And you will be able to track what your better days look like. And you will be able to learn more about your particular body's response to the chemotherapy in a way that could be helpful to your doctors.
Yeah,
because
it's funny. I had one of my oncologists. I was very fond of her, because everybody that worked so hard to keep me alive. But it was really interesting. A few years after my diagnosis, like, she would frequently say, like, listen, you're going to know something is off.
That's right.
Before she does, before the images do, before the blood work does.
That's
Because,
right.
I mean, I've just been doing it for so long, and you get to know your body. It's to this point now, I don't even have to look at my Garmin watch. I can tell if I'm plus or minus like three beats on my heart rate. So
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Learn.
Yes. So see, that's the thing. So in my book, we actually talk about logging these things, because if you are logging what your symptoms are and you're logging what your activity is, one of the things that you then learn is, if you're going through your treatment and you learn that for the first 3 days you have couch days, and then you get off the couch and you can do 10 minutes, and then you can do 20 minutes, and then you can do 30 minutes, and you're doing 30 minutes, and you're doing 30 minutes, and then the next day you can't do 2 minutes, and that doesn't make sense. You need to call your doctor. Something's wrong, right? So exercise becomes sort of this bellwether of your ability to know that something has gone wrong. And I think that it is very common for people who are going through cancer to have this terrible sensation of, this sort of black box of what is it doing? What's happening to me? And, they rely on the scans right? They rely on the tests and the scans. And if you know that something is really different about your symptoms, which you do if you are moving. If you're not moving, the analogy that I use is if you never drive your car and you get in the car and you drive it and there's a squeak in the car, then you're like, oh my God, there's a squeak in the car, right? And you freak out about the squeak, right? If you drive your car every day and you know that squeak is just always there, but now suddenly there's some new whistle, then you're like, well, that's weird. I've never heard that before. Then you know that there is something that you need to report to the mechanic, right? But you can't know that unless you're driving your car on a regular basis. So the analogy is we have to move our bodies, use our bodies for what God intended them to be used for, if you will.
They were built to move. I love
saying they were meant to move. We were meant to move. And we're not, there's no clean and jerks involved in this. I'm not asking anybody to do a marathon or a triathlon. We're talking, just get up, just get up, walk, just get out of your chair.
Could we talk about some of the side effects? Because virtually every patient going through chemotherapy or active treatment is going to face fatigue. And then along with that, you've got varying levels of melancholy to temporary depression and that kind of thing. So I've heard and I've read that there's no drug that is as effective as cancer-related fatigue as exercise. So why don't you talk about that for a little bit if you could?
Yep, that is actually true. So there are a number of symptoms, excuse me. There are a number of symptoms for which exercise is an excellent, excellent antidote as you are going through your cancer treatment and as you're recovering from your cancer treatment. Because one of the things, secret toy surprise for people who've been through cancer treatment, is that you feel really lousy for like a month afterwards. Yeah. And, I don't know why, but doctors somehow don't get that message across to a lot of people. I don't know if they're saying it and we're not hearing them, but I know that we didn't know that in our household, and it was a big surprise. So it's not just during the treatment, but it's in recovery after the treatment. So cancer-related fatigue is the number one symptom that is reported by people as they're going through chemotherapy, as they're going through radiation therapy. It's very common in immunotherapies as well. And we know that exercise is among the most potent things you can do. There is not a drug on the market that is more effective than exercise for addressing cancer-related fatigue. So and it doesn't have to be a huge amount of exercise. We're talking about, 30 minutes, 3 times a week of aerobic exercise. So walking, brisk walking is plenty. In addition, we know that exercise has a positive effect on anxiety, which like 45% of patients report anxiety. Well, duh, as you're going through a bout of cancer treatment. Depression, we know that exercise is outstanding for approaching depression during and after treatment. We know that exercise improves sense of quality of life, so which sounds very mushy until you're in the middle of not feeling so good about your quality of life. Just simply your feeling about whether life is worth living right now. We know that exercise.
Can I stop you for a second? I've shared this with you before, but I should have started this little segment with this. But I went through chemotherapy in 2012, and I remember my doc at that first visit after that. He's like, "Okay, so the bad news is we don't have a cure for this yet. It's going to come back, but when we do, we'll have new generation of precision medicine." So it did come back, and I started taking a new med August of 2016.
Right.
So I had a 4-year remission. And one of the things right before I started taking it, the doctor said, for this medicine and many others, but for this one, this class of meds, month 5 or 6, the fatigue is going to build up. So it's it's going to be it's going to be there. So just nothing's wrong. Nothing. It's just we've just seen this. So just something to be aware of, and almost like clockwork. It
Really?
was crazy. Yes, at month 5, I was going to some really dark places, Katie. We've talked about this, and I love sharing this part because I don't want people to think it's just them, and just this is just such one of the best stories for the power of exercise. So everybody calls me Jollie. I mean, I try to stay positive. That's just who I am. And I've never been one to feel melancholy or depressed of any sorts. But month 5 on this medication, I was feeling it day by day. Every few days I was going darker and darker until one day, this particular week, I didn't want to do anything. I had completely disengaged with life. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I didn't want to work. I didn't want to talk to my wife. I didn't want to talk to the girls. I just wanted to sit on the couch, watch TV, and just do nothing. And I say this very carefully. I didn't contemplate suicide, but for the first time in my life, I understood. I had a glimpse into why somebody might, because this was a very short time frame for me. And I just had this fear, like if this continued for months and years, I'm like, oh my gosh. So it got to such a point. Thursday night, 10:30. This is 2016. I still remember Thursday night, 10:30 at night. I told Tracy, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I've got to go for a run. And she said, you're an idiot. It's 10:30 at night. I'm like, I don't care. I got to go run. And Katie, a mile into my run, it just vanished. Like all the dark thoughts, the melancholy, the fatigue, it just, like those endorphins kicked in, and I don't know what else, but like it just vanished. And I knew just over the course of the next several weeks and months, as long as I was exercising like every other day, I could keep those feelings at bay until they finally, gradually with time wore off. It was just an epiphany. I don't know what else to call it, but it was life changing. Quite real.
I am so glad you went for that run. I've heard you tell that story before. It's a great story. It's a great illustration of exactly what we see in the data over and over again. The challenge is taking somebody who is sitting on the couch in that dark place and to convince them that they are actually going to feel better. And the way that I've started to talk about this is to actually say, can you tell me that anything you're doing right now is making you feel better? And the answer is usually no. I'm like, well, then you have nothing to lose. Let's do 10 minutes of movement and see how you feel.
That's a great perspective. Sure.
So, yeah. So when we finish treatment, then the focus changes again, right? So when we finish treatment, the focus changes to how do we prevent it from coming back? How do we prevent death? So one of the things we know about recurrent cancer, with the exception of CLL, which you've dealt with, usually for a lot of solid tumors, recurrent cancer is fatal, is deadly. So we really are interested in preventing recurrence and preventing cancer-specific death. So we have, remember the types of data that I talked about. So we have the observational data, the animal data, and the experimental data in humans. So we have 2 types of data in the survivorship realm. We have observational data in humans, and we have animal data. And the observational data in humans tells us that being more physically active reduces the likelihood of cancer-specific mortality for breast, colon, and prostate cancers on the order of 30 to 50%. 30 to 50%.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's on the order of drug number 3. I don't know which drug I'm going to name, but it's big. It's big.
Yeah.
Further, we have beautiful emerging experimental evidence in animal models that tells us that exercise is helpful as well. But what's interesting is that those animal models are telling us that it is actually the combination of exercise and high quality nutrition that makes a difference. That makes a difference in reducing the likelihood of death from cancer. And there have been 2 experiments in particular. I was involved in one of them at the University of Pennsylvania, It was led by Louis Chodosh, and then there is some really, really beautiful work by Connie Rogers, both of which did 4 group studies in rats. And what they did was they found ways to insert cancer into the animals. And so all of the animals had the cancer, and then they either removed the cancer or removed the, the way that the cancer was showing up in the animal. So there are a variety of ways that these experiments are done. So they created little rat breast cancer survivors, basically. And then they randomized them to receive nothing, or a nutrition intervention only, or a nutrition intervention was largely about weight control. So they were trying to do some, like a 10% weight loss. Or they were doing an aerobic exercise intervention, or the combination. And in 2 separate laboratories in 2 different places in Pennsylvania at almost the exact same time, these 2 experiments happened. And they both concluded that it was the combination of 10% weight loss through nutrition and aerobic exercise that caused a reduction in the likelihood of that breast cancer returning and mortality from that breast cancer. So very striking findings, frankly.
Yeah, wow.
Very striking findings.
That's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. It is exciting. So
these are mouse models.
these
So
are animal. They're rat. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's a start. It's a start, but it gives us hope. It gives us a glimpse.
It does indeed. It does indeed.
Be possible. I love that. All right, very good, very good. Let's see here. So, are there any other? Just trying to think. Any other big studies in the for cancer survivors, or anything that? No, let's talk about like recommendations. How about that?
Okay.
You touched about it a couple times. So generally speaking, so what should cancer survivors, or actually anybody,
Right.
cancer or without, let's dive into that a little bit. What should
Okay.
they be trying to
Okay, so I'm going to put this into 3 categories, 3 buckets. One is for prevention, and those guidelines come from the American College of Sports Medicine as well as the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So there are physical activity guidelines for all Americans, and they do include guidelines specific to cancer prevention. And the recommendation is 150 to 300 minutes a week of aerobic exercise every week. So walking 30 minutes 5 times a week would meet this recommendation. So that's the recommendation for prevention of cancer. For people who are currently undergoing a cancer therapy of one kind or another, whether it's radiation or immunotherapy or chemotherapy, etc., the recommendation is 3 times a week of aerobic exercise and twice weekly resistance exercise. And that's in order to treat those symptoms that we talked about earlier. And then for cancer survivors, those who have completed their treatment, who are interested in reducing the likelihood of their cancer coming back and reducing risk from death from their cancer, the recommendation goes back to the prevention recommendation. And this is guidance from the American College of Sports Medicine, the American Cancer Society, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the guidance is 150 to 300 minutes a week of aerobic exercise. The American College of Sports Medicine adds twice weekly resistance training over what everybody else recommends, because that is outstanding guidance for just functional health and for being able to withstand doing all of the aerobic exercise as well.
And it's probably a good idea for someone that hasn't exercised before to ask for help, and especially on the resistance side, and depending on what type of cancer they've had and what they've gone through, it's okay to ask for help and go see a professional exercise specialist.
Exactly. And we have a national exercise oncology directory online. So if you Google for ACSM and moving through cancer, just that much, ACSM and moving through cancer, you'll find the directory. There's a big green button on the page that gets you to the directory, and you can find, places in your state that are available for you to participate. There are also online programs that people can participate in from anywhere in the country. So there are a number of organizations. One of the ones that I like a lot is called Two Unstoppable. They're based in Virginia, but they do online programs for people across the country.
Every single cancer survivor should be referred to an exercise specialist as part of their individual survivorship treatment. So do you mind talking a little bit about kind of, it's a made-up word, but like systematizing exercise oncology so that we can really raise the noise and ensure that this incredible benefit is made available to more patients?
That's my raison d'etre. Making exercise standard of care in the setting of oncology is my mission statement. So I think one of the things that I have learned in my efforts to make exercise happen in clinical settings, in the setting of people who are currently receiving cancer treatment, is that I want to acknowledge just how hard oncologists are working right now, and the fact that they are about to work a whole lot harder too. As the population ages, we have more and more people who need the care of an oncologist, and the population of oncologists is not growing. And so the amount of time that oncologists get to spend with patients is going to go down. So I want to acknowledge the fact that oncologists have, many, many things that they need to cover with their patients. And while I will tell you that I defy you to find another supportive care intervention that has more benefits than exercise for people who are going through cancer, I also understand that they have, they need to talk to them about fertility preservation, and they need to talk to them about financial toxicity, social determinants of health, cold caps, many, many, many things are on the docket when a patient sees an oncologist. So I think we need to find ways that create an infrastructure that support the oncologist. So I'm really eager for the oncologist to have to say little to nothing to the patient, and that there is an infrastructure in place. And the oncologist might say, for the sake of analogy, the oncologist might say, we've reviewed your case, and I believe that the right regimen for you is ACT. My nurses are going to make it happen. You're going to see the following people, and they're going to schedule it. Okay? And that's it. That's all. They might say something else about, you're going to experience the following side effects. You're going to be doing this for 3 months. It's every 3 weeks. I mean, they're going to say something, but they're going to be, fairly succinct about it. And most of the infrastructure to support the chemotherapy is outside of that encounter. It is with the nursing staff and the administrative staff of the chemo infusion suite, right? There is no such infrastructure right now for exercise. That doesn't exist. So the logistics of figuring out how to make exercise happen is going to happen outside of the encounter with the clinician. We are going to need to navigate patients to exercise. We, at my center, are currently doing a triage and referral process that's getting us to connect 45% of patients. 45% of patients.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. To some kind of exercise programming. We obviously can't force people, and people do say no to an exercise program, but we get 45% of patients connected to something. And we're doing so by pushing in and asking a triage and referral questionnaire, and then having a rehab navigator go and sit and talk to patients and say, you said that you were very fatigued, that you have CIPN, chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy, and that you fell twice last week. I'm just making this up. Based on that, we think that we could really help you, and this is the kind of program that we would do with you, and this is how, would you be willing to come in a half hour early next time you come for chemo so that we can teach you how to do this program? That's the kind of thing that we're doing, right? So I think that we need to, that's one option. I don't think that is the only option, Jollie, but I can tell you, I'm not aware of a better option. I think that we do have to do some kind of triage and referral process where we have to recognize that not every patient is able to do what you're able to do, and what you were able to do as you went through your chemo. Some people need a whole lot less and are able to do a whole lot less, but still benefit from being physically active. And so meeting people where they are and setting up a program that works based on what they are currently capable of doing requires an infrastructure. In order to have that infrastructure, we need to have third-party payer reimbursement. And so I am leading a group that is submitting a national coverage determination application to the Centers for Medicare Services, CMS, at the end of this month. And we are hoping that they will receive our application favorably and that we will have some coverage for exercise oncology services, which I think will go a long way towards helping us to provide exercise oncology to people across the United States. We also, same group, the Moving Through Cancer Task Force, has mapped all of the exercise oncology programming across the United States. And we've actually geocoded all of the programs across the United States. And there are vast disparities according to geography. There's fewer programs in rural places, according to socioeconomic status, according to race and ethnicity, and according to cancer mortality. We know that programs don't exist in places where people are largely poor, largely minority, and largely lower socioeconomic status and, rural. Unfortunately, we also know there's published evidence that those are the very places where people tend to experience worse symptoms for the very symptoms that we know exercise is helpful for. So we have these created disparities because exercise is currently available mostly to people who look like you and me, who are fairly well educated, and who are in an urban setting, and people who are higher socioeconomic status. And I think, it is my view that everyone deserves to have an exercise referral. Everyone deserves to have an exercise referral as they're going through their cancer journey.
That's a great place to stop.
Okay.
I love that. We just need an easy button for clinicians.
We do
and
indeed.
If they think of it, referring it out just like they do imaging, just like
Exactly.
they do radiation,
Exactly.
just like
Exactly.
surgery, here's your prescription for, whatever.
Exactly.
They're not the ones that have to be the expert. They just have to identify it and sit.
You said it. That is exactly right. When we ask them to be the expert on exercise oncology, we've lost the game. That is not the way to go.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Katie, this has been fantastic. I've been looking forward to this so much, and it did not. Our conversation did not let me down. This has been really good, and I'm sure we're going to touch a lot of people. And if it's just one person that is going through some type of cancer, or they know one of their loved ones is, that they start exercising, then this will definitely be worth it. So thank you so much, Katie.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jollie. It was great.
So real quick, when we finish up, just tell us where people can learn more about you and in your book, because it's a fascinating book.
So the book is called Moving Through Cancer, and it's available on, where fine books are sold, online and in bookshops. And it's intended to be a translation of the scientific evidence base into lay language for people as they are going through their cancer journey and their loved ones. I am also at the helm of something called the Moving Through Cancer Task Force. You can find us at ACSM Moving Through Cancer. Just Google for ACSM Moving Through Cancer. And I think those are two excellent places to find me.
Very good. I will say the book is just so conversational, and it's an easy read. I think it's good for either a cancer survivor themselves or someone, a loved one with cancer, or I think it's equally as good for the clinician. So it doesn't really matter where you are. It's a wonderful book, and I'm so glad you wrote it, and I look forward to more of your books coming out.
And Jollie appears in chapter 16.
Thanks so much, Katie. This has been wonderful. Very good. I'll put all this information in the show notes, and hopefully we can, affect change in some folks' lives after today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks,
All right.
Jollie.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks so much for listening. Please rate and review the podcast on the platform of your choice so we can reach more people and more people are recommended this podcast. And if you really liked it, the single best way you can help us grow is by telling your friends. Now, for all the legal stuff. The views and opinion expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. For my day job, I'm an employee of AbbVie and appear on this podcast on my own accord and not in the professional capacity as an AbbVie employee. All viewpoints provided are my personal opinions and not intended to reflect those of my employer. If you have any questions or comments, please shoot me an email at jollie@interrupthunger.org. Let's go spread some joy, people.